Alrighty, so now I'm going to get into chapter 10. This chapter is a little bit long. I'm just going to warn you real quick before we get started, but let's begin. Ooh, cake, Dad said, grabbing one as we led him through the kitchen to the front door. Chocolate dribbled down his chin. Can we take some for the road? I thought concussions made people sick to their stomach, but that didn't seem true in Dad's case. Sure. I grabbed 3 more cakes and I tied them up in a dish towel. When we gotten Dad down the porch steps, I told Janine to wait there. Then I ran to the back of the house, got Dad's bike, and wheeled it out front. What are you thinking? He can't bike like this, Janine said. How do you know? Let's just see. Dad got on fine. He even pedaled off okay, but after less than a minute, he forgot what he was doing and just quit pedaling. Luckily, he put his feet down before he tipped over too far. What if we just kept saying, "You're riding a bike, you're riding a bike," over and over, I said. Janine started back up the porch. I'm getting the car keys. You are not, I told you. That's crazy and like against the law. So how are we getting there? I have another idea. It's crazy too, but not against the law. What? What about the baby buggy? For who? Dad! I called as I ran off to get it. Behind the house, a big plastic sheet covered the brand new 2-person bike. Nobody had even ridden in it, but it was already set up with the baby buggy attached. I pulled off the sheet. The bike was so shiny that the blue painted looked silver. I flicked up the kickstand and wheeled it out front. Dad and I haven't even tried it out yet, Janine said. You ride it like a regular bike. I rode one with Mom in Montreal that time. Janine studied the bike. Maybe I could fit it in the buggy with Dad. Maybe I could fit in the buggy with Dad. What are you talking about? Dad just barely fit in the buggy by himself. Plus, I can't pull both of you. Well, why does Dad need to go into the buggy at all? Why can't he ride on the second seat? It's for a kid. Dad's legs are way too long. Besides, you saw him on the bike. After 5 minutes, he'll fall right off or just tip over and take us all down. Hey guys, since his bike adventure, Dad had been sitting on the porch steps staring into space. What's this for? He held up the ice pack. Your head. You fell off the roof, I said. Why was I on the roof? Because you're a nutty, Janine said. I poked her hard through her bathrobe. What? He's not going to remember in 5 minutes. She looked back at the bike and took a deep breath. Oh, fine. We'll take him in the buggy. Then she snapped her fingers right in Dad's face. Come on. We're going. Get up. Dad looked confused but stood up. I tied the dish towel around the remaining cake and put it in the baby buggy. We'll have to walk down the road. You heard him. Walk, Janine said, giving Dad a shove. Again, Dad did as he was told, which just made me sad. I would have given anything right then to hear him go off in French at Janine for bossing him around. When we started down Terror Mountain, I was leading the bike and Janine was leading Dad. But when we hit the first steep bit, the baby buggy swung downhill so fast the bike ripped out of my hands and crashed into a tree. After that, Janine and Dad walked on either side of the buggy to keep him from veering into the woods. Janine kept reminding Dad to stay right up next to it, but of course he kept forgetting, and before she could remind him again, he'd fall behind and the buggy would skid off his side into a tree. Then the bike would stop suddenly, and then the handlebars would smash into my chest. Dad! I'd yell. Oh, was that me? He said again. It took forever, but we finally made it to the bottom, and somehow, even with all the crashing into the trees, I was pretty sure none of my ribs were broken, and we hadn't wrecked the bike or the buggy, though neither looked brand new anymore. Okay, get in, I said when we wheeled the bike and buggy out onto the road. Where? Dad said. Here. I held open the zippered flap of the buggy. Dad snorted a laugh. Absolutely not. It's the only way, Janine said. Why can't I bike? Because you just can't. Now get in, and put this on your head. Janine handed him the ice pack. Dad stuck out his lips just like Zoe does when my parents yell at her, but he held the ice to his head anyway and said, fine. Then he turned his back to the buggy and lowered himself into it, leaving his feet still out on the road. We need all of you in there, I said. What do you suggest I do with these? He said, kicking his legs straight out. They fold, don't they? Fold them. I picked up his legs one by one and put them inside the buggy. See? No problem. Oh, yeah, this is great. Dad rolled his eyes. I'm not going to lie. It didn't look comfortable, and for sure, if we hit a bump, his kneecap would have give him a nosebleed. But at least all he had to do was sit there. Janine and I were just about to get on the bike when I realized she was still wearing her bathrobe. Take off the robe. But it's cold and I only have on PJs. You'll warm up on the bike. I can't ride into town in PJs, she said, as if two kids on a tandem bike pulling their 6-foot father in a baby buggy wouldn't give people enough to talk about. How is your bathrobe better than PJs? It kind of looks like a coat. People won't be able to tell it's a robe. They will if they're not blind. Look, it could get caught. It's dangerous. Really? Yes, really. Why don't you believe me about anything? I know I'm not a genius, but I'm not stupid. I know some useful things. Fine. Janine took off the robe and stuffed it into the buggy. It's freezing. I put a leg over the bike and held it up while Janine climbed on behind me. Then I pushed off. I was expecting to feel super wobbly at first, but the bike felt pretty balanced. I like this, Janine called from behind. It's kind of fun. Just then the bike swerved and I had to lean out to keep it from falling over. Janine! Sorry, I was just trying to get more comfortable. Don't move. I mean, just move your legs, not anything else. Usually when I'm riding to town, I get on and just go. I don't even have to think about turning the pedals over. But this was different. This felt like work, and we weren't even on a hill yet. Then I looked down and realized why I was working so hard. Janine's boots were going around, but when the pedals dropped, I could see the ground between the pedal and the boot. She wasn't pushing at all. Her feet were just along there for the ride. Janine, pedal! I am! No, you're not. Your feet on a merry-go-round. They need to push. Come on. Right, left. Right, left. But that's hard, she whined. It's called riding a bike. I stood up on the pedals. Why are you doing that? You get more power like this, but just sit. It would be too hard to balance with both of us standing. When the road flattened out, I sat back down. My back was killing me, and I was breathing hard. Are we almost there? Can you just pedal? I was too out of breath to talk. Janine was quiet for a while after that, and she was definitely pushing the pedals down now because I could hear her puffing behind me. I don't like this, she shouted as we started to pick up speed heading down a long hill. I can't do anything about gravity, Janine. Can't you slow us down? We're not even going that fast. Just relax. But Janine didn't last. Instead, Janine did what Janine does. She freaked, and the bike began to dip and swerve like it was trying to shake me off. Okay. I showed us down until the screaming and the swooping stopped. Better? Since even with Janine actually pedaling, we had no chance of making it up the monster hill outside of town. I stopped at the bottom of it. I'd planned on picking Janine and Dad up at the traffic light at the top, but once he was out of the buggy, Dad swore he would never get back in. So I rode all the way up to the clinic and waited for them there. Hello? Anybody here? Janine called as we entered the empty waiting room. Besides some armchairs and a coffee table, it didn't look much like other waiting rooms I'd seen. The walls were crowded with colorful paintings from floor to ceiling, and there was no window with receptionists sitting in it. Hey, just come on up, a man's voice called. Up, I called back. It seemed weird to have a doctor's office on more than one floor. If someone were really sick, would you want to make them climb a flight of stairs? Yeah, come up, the man said. So remember that they're in a little town, and usually if you're in a little town and there is a doctor's office, it's like in a house, sort of. So like there is an upstairs and there's more than one floor, and it's more like homey. But most of us that go to the doctor now, we actually go to an actual doctor's office, and she's explaining how the doctor's office that she's in right now looks a lot different than the doctor's office that they've been to in New York City. I'll go, I said, and left Janine quizzing Dad on U.S. capitals and the state capitals in the waiting room. These he remembered perfectly. At least according to Janine. I couldn't tell you since I've taken a stand against memorizing facts readily available on the internet. Perfect timing. I need another pair of hands, I heard the man say as I climbed the stairs. Was it possible that Petersville's was so short on able bodies that the doctor just let anybody pitch in to help with surgical procedures? My stomach somersaulted like I was in an elevator coming down too fast. I'm not so good with blood, mine or anybody else's. What I saw when I got up there did make me want to run back down again. But it wasn't some lady having a wart sawed off. It was a man, super thin, dripping with sweat and wearing way too little clothing to be inviting in visitors. The only thing separating him from the complete nakedness were those teeny tiny raining shorts. You know, the ones that are so small you're worried something will fall out? Those. The man held a paintbrush in each hand, and he was going at the enormous canvas like he was trying to teach it a lesson. It must have been fighting back, too, because the thick carpet of hair on his chest was more blue than gray. Before I could ask where the doctor was, the guy was rushing at me, shoving a long piece of cardboard into my hands and then pulling me by it back over to the painting. Here, just hold it like this, he said, pressing it against the canvas at an angle. But, shush, quiet, he ordered, raising his paintbrush over his mouth so fast. He splattered both our faces with paint. Then he began painting furiously around the cardboard, covering not just the canvas, but both my hands with cold, syrupy paint. But, shh, it's just, please, this will only take 1 minute. 60 seconds, nothing. Okay, 60 seconds is nothing, but it was not 60. I counted, somewhere after 200 Mississippi. I let the cardboard drop. Oh, no, he said, more sad than angry. I was almost done. Look, I said, I really need to find Dr. Charney. You're not Joe? No. You're not here about the painting apprenticeship? No, I'm here to see the doctor. Why didn't you say something? He said, tossing his paintbrushes into a coffee can. I must have looked annoyed because then he said, kidding, and knocked me a little too hard on the shoulder with a blue fist. Just give me a second. This guy was the doctor? Maybe doctor meant something different in Petersville. Fever? He went to a sink in the corner of the room and began washing his hands. Flu's already making the rounds. Have you been vaccinated? He spoke doctor at least. No, it's not me. It's my dad, downstairs. He fell off our roof. We think he has a concussion. I'm sure Dad's just fine, but let's take a look, he said, drying his hands as he headed for the stairs. Aren't you forgetting something? I tugged at my sweatshirt. Personally, I thought he could have used a shower to give in all the paint and sweat, but the least he could do was put on some clothes. Right, back in a flash. He dashed behind a screen that hid a corner of the room. As I waited, I looked around the large, messy space, which, in addition to artist studio, was part kitchen, living room, office, and tool shop. A minute later, he popped out from behind the screen in a white lab coat, tufts of blue chest hair peeking out above the collar. Ready! I guess he thought, like the shower, a shirt was optional. I couldn't help wondering if he even had underwear on under there. Just the thought skeeved me out so much I couldn't look at him. I run hot, he said like he could hear what I was thinking. Oh, I said, and hurried down the stairs, trying not to think about whether what he just told me was, no, I'm not wearing anything, this lab coat. It wasn't until I got to the bottom until I noticed he was still barefoot. Not surprisingly, Janine insisted on interrogating Dr. Charney before she let him touch Dad. And I have to admit, it was one of those times that I was happy Janine is so Janine. First, she demanded to know why Dr. Charney didn't have a receptionist like a real doctor. Was it because he didn't actually have any patients? Not having a receptionist meant he could charge people less for seeing him, he explained. Then he picked up a date book from the coffee table and showed her how people come into the clinic and penciled in their own appointments. This actually seemed really smart to me. If it did to Janine too, she didn't let on. Next, Janine wanted to know why the doctor wasn't seeing patients that day, a weekday. Because, he explained, He took Thursdays off and saw patients on Saturdays so they wouldn't have to take off work. What a great idea, Dad said. Janine was still not satisfied. Finally, Janine asked about the doctor's school degrees. Dr. Barber, our pediatrician, had a wall in his waiting room covered with framed degrees and covers of magazines that named him one of the best doctors in New York City. Where are yours? She asked. Dr. Charney screwed up his mouth, then walked out of the waiting room. Janine and I exchanged looks. Was he coming back? Was the question fast talking the doctor didn't have an answer to? This wasn't entirely good news since an artist pretending to be a doctor was still better than no doctor at all. I was just beginning to wonder what we should do now when the doctor marched back in. 2 yellowed sheets of paper held high. Found them, he said with a big smile and handed them to Janine. Her eyes bulged. Happy now, he said. You went to Yale? Did you know that 5 U.S. presidents went to Yale? I am aware, Dr. Charney said. So why don't you have these out here on the wall where people can see them? He held up the papers and studied them. Not really much to look at, are they? Besides, then there would be less room for these, he said, pointing to his paintings. By the time Dr. Charney was finally permitted to examine him, my father had started to get his memory back. He could now remember that he told him he'd fallen off the roof, which seemed like a good sign, even if he couldn't remember the fall itself. Either way, Dr. C was sure he hadn't had a stroke. Just to be safe, though, he wanted Mom to take him for a CAT scan. So when she and Zoe finally got to Petersville, an hour after we called her from the doctor's office, she had to turn around and drive right back to Crenland with Dad. Josh's mom said we could stay with her and Josh at the library till they got back. The first thing Janine did when we got to the library was sat down at the computer and Googled Dr. Z. Charney. There were so many hits, I was sure they couldn't all be him. The first was an Amazon link. Janine clicked on it. A photo of a smiling man holding a book called Hometown Healing, Breaking All the Rules, popped up. He was wearing way more clothing than I would have bet the man I just met would ever wear. Shirt, tie, and blazer. But there was no denying it was him. Under the photo, it said the book was about being a doctor in small towns where most people don't have much money and few have health insurance. It also said that the author had practiced medicine in small towns all over the country before settling in Petersville, New York. The next hits were all articles about the book and awards it had won. About halfway down the first page, though, the results changed. They weren't about Dr. C anymore, but someone named Zed Charney, painter. No way, I said. Find a photo. It took some clicking, but there on some art gallery site and a photo of a party celebrating his new exhibition in Seattle was Dr. C, wearing a shirt open to his belly button, the chest hair I was becoming way too familiar with out there for everyone with an internet connection to see. Mom told me that this new museum in Spain just bought 2 of his paintings, said Josh, who joined us at the computer. I couldn't remember seeing Janine so impressed by anyone living. She'd learned about some kid who figured out that the federal government could save millions of dollars each year if it just changed the font it used when it printed off stuff. I was blown away too. I never met someone like Dr. C, not just someone who'd done as much as he, but someone who'd done all the stuff and didn't even go around telling everyone he had. By the rules Zane Kramer and now Charlie too believed the world worked, Dr. C simply couldn't exist. What he'd done, who he was, none of it was possible. But it was, and Dr. C was living, breathing proof. Hey, what's that? Josh said, pointing to the dish towel sack I was still carrying around. Oh, right, I completely forgotten. There was still 1 cake left, so I told Josh it was something I owed Winnie, and I explained after I went to the general store to give it to her. Alright, so now I think Tristan walked over to the general store to talk to Winnie. So it says, "What's this?" Winnie said when I untied the dish towel and set the cake on the counter. "Looks like somebody put their fist through it. We had some bite trouble. It will taste good. Do you have a microwave so we can zap it in for a few seconds? It's better warm." "Radiation makes it taste better. How about mercury?" That make it taste better too? Maybe I have some we could shake over it like powdered sugar. Never mind, I said. It would still taste good. The chocolate center wouldn't pack the same ooze. Her loss. Winnie leaned over and sniffed. What is it anyway? Molten chocolate cake. Just chocolate, right? I don't like it when people get all fancy and mix the chocolate up with stuff that's got no business with chocolate. Some guy came in here trying to sell me chocolate bars with chili peppers in them. What's that about? Chocolate bars with chili peppers? Clearly I was getting points for chocolate. That was something, at least. I know, I said. My parents took us to this fancy restaurant once that put lavender in the chocolate mousse. It was like eating that dried stuff people used to make clothes smell good. I didn't know. Excuse me, I'm sorry. This is chocolate and eggs and butter and sugar. It's my mom's favorite recipe. Famous, huh? Did they write about it in papers? She pointed to the frame on the counter. I just meant people love it. How was it that every other word out of my mouth got her all worked up? Worked up wasn't a good way to get into a taste test. Well, I'm not everyone, she muttered as she disappeared into the back of the store. Moments later, she was back, fork in hand. Just chocolate, right? She jabbed the cake like she was trying to wake it up. Just chocolate, I promise. Okay, here we go. I tried to read her face as she chewed. Did anybody ever tell you it's rude to watch a person eat? Sorry. I turned around and pretended to study the egg cartons. She grunted. I snuck a quick look, just in time to see her take another bite, much bigger than the first. Not earth-shattering or anything, she said, still chewing, but she should be able to make my donuts, okay? Oh, I'm sorry. But you should be able to make my donuts, okay? Yes! I spun around to face her. Not so fast, she said, wagging her fork at me. Before you get that recipe, we need to hammer out the details. You bring your business plan. You never told me I needed a business plan. I never told you not to put chili peppers in chocolate cake either, but you knew that. Of course you need a business plan. You're selling something, right? If you're selling, you're in business. You need a budget. You need to figure out your costs. You need to figure out how many donuts you're planning to sell each day. I wouldn't recommend making more than 40 for starters, no matter how much people beg. And then I wanted to cry. I just wanted a chocolate cream donut. Now I was starting a business. I'd only come up with an idea to sell the donuts to get Winnie to give up the recipe and get my parents off my back. After all, I need to know your profit so I can figure out my cut, Winnie was saying when I started listening again. What? You want money? But I'm going to be doing all the work? But it's my recipe. They call it intellectual property. You got to pay for a license to use what I created. Now that sounds fair, doesn't it? She took another big bite of cake. She seemed quite pleased with how things were going. Why wouldn't she be? She'd gotten the stupid new kid in town to make her chocolate cake, and now she thought she was going to get him to pay her for a privilege of making her donuts. When you use a recipe from a cookbook, you don't have to buy a license, I argued. Ah, but you do, she said, dotting an I in the air with her fork. You had to buy the cookbook. Unfortunately, I could see her point. How much do you want? I told you, I can't figure that out without seeing the numbers, but I don't know anything about making a budget and all that other stuff. It sounds like a lot of math. Maybe I could get my sister to work on it. She's really good at that kind of thing. What are you talking about? This isn't math. It's common sense. Besides, this is your business. Why do you want to hand over the details of your business to just anybody? She's not anybody. She's my sister. Even worse, family members don't respect each other's property. It's the first rule of family. What's mine is yours. You really want somebody who can't tell the difference between yours and theirs working on your businesses? On your business? She did sell my stuff at this tag sale we had once, I admitted. Of course she did. Family. They sell your stuff right out underneath you. But I wouldn't even know how to start putting a budget together. Like I said, this isn't rocket science. Go across the street. What's across the street? You have your sister do your reading for you, too. Ever heard of a library? She said, knocking on my head. You want me to do research? I groaned. These donuts were slipping farther away every second. Just tell Mary that what you're looking for and she'll point you in the right directions. I can't believe this, I muttered as I dragged myself out of the store. What was that? Winnie called. Bye! I shouted over my shoulder. My only hope was that if I acted really stupid, Josh's mom would just do the budget for me. She was a librarian, so she had to be pretty smart, and she wasn't family, so I figured I could trust her more than Janine. Alrighty, that is the end of chapter 10, and as you can see, we're almost a little bit halfway through the book, and it's getting really, really, really good, and I hope you guys are really enjoying it, but I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And I hope you're getting outside, enjoying the warm weather. And I miss you guys all so very much. See you guys tomorrow.